Let's first take a look at the fabric pieces here. First, here's the pattern for the collar. You can make a mark next to this front position to avoid confusion after we finish processing so that you won't mix up the front. Turn the collar inside out and mark. Then we will work on the upper and lower pieces. After sewing the front sides together, trim them. Then look at the front and back pieces of the lining. We will follow the pattern for this. Just draw it normally. One front piece, then draw the two back pieces by flipping them. Pay attention to the front side, because for the front side I have sewn pleats and made this lace edge decoration. Don't draw on the front piece of the outer layer for now. You can prepare a larger piece of fabric, or you can first watch how I handle it afterwards. Next, prepare this fabric. But if some ladies you want to take it easy and not sew then pleats, actually your outer fabric can be handled the same way. As for the back piece, we do it just like with the lining fabric. Normally flip it from side to side. Just leave a 5mm seam allowance. And then there's the button placement part. Regarding the fabric for the fastening, we'll also handle it later based on the video. Next is the lower part, the pants section. Because the blueprint is quite long, it still doesn't fit on an A4 sheet. Only provides half. When drawing on the fabric, we first draw the left half. After finishing the drawing, the middle part connects. Flip it over and draw the other half. Pay attention to this position at the bottom hem of the pants. Leave a 1 centimeter seam because we will sew the channel later. Insert this elastic band. Then I'll talk about the two sides and how to trim the middle position, the places on both sides. We follow this position and trim it with a normal 5mm margin. This is how it looks after trimming. The middle position, we can cut straight inward like this. From the topmost U-shaped position, just leave a 5mm gap. For some sizes, if the middle part is relatively far apart, you can also trim it like this. Trim out a small U shape. Actually, it's just on the side. Also leave a 5mm margin. After cutting, it looks like this. If the spacing is relatively narrow, we just do it as mentioned before. Just cut straight once, and that's here we will handle the buttonhole part. First, fold the fabric in half. The side folded inward is the front side. The side facing up is the back side. Align the fold line with the dashed line at the center of the buttonhole. Then draw out this half of the edge. Next, trim it a bit. Leave a 5mm seam allowance along the edge. Do not sew along this longer line. We need to sew the shorter sections on both sides. When sewing, be sure to stitch right up to the very edges. In other words, sew all the seams completely. When sewing, keep an eye on one particular near the point. Fold, you can skip a stitch. Don't sew there. Let's take a closer look here. Don't sew a stitch at this spot, because if sewing is done too close to the edge at this spot, the fabric here will be tightened by this stitching. There will be some deformation here. After flipping it over, wait, this is a right angle position here. It won't look as neat, so at this spot, we can leave 1 or 2 stitches empty. Next, we will work on the areas with seams on both sides. Trim this edge slightly on the side. Leave about 3mm. The longer edge without stitching, do not move it. Then directly flip it to the front side. Smooth it out a bit with heat. Then we take out this part of the buckle. Align the dotted line with the crease. Mark the position of its longer edge. It's basically like drawing its contour. After handling it, set it aside for now. Here we are making the collar. I'm using 60 count long staple cotton for it. These two edges are left unsewn. We sew along the line at their location. When sewing, Both the start and end points extend outward by 5 millimeters as seam allowance. That is, we stitch from this point over to this point like this. Here we stitch from this point to this point. When sewing, we place the right sides of the two fabric pieces facing each other. Then when sewing the collar, the stitch length can be slightly shorter. Here, I usually use a stitch length of about 1.8 because if the stitch length is too large, in areas with some curves, if you increase the stitch length, it will overshoot. So, if the stitch length is shorter, the curve will be easier to shape. Then we cut off the collar. At the areas without stitching, normally leave a 5 millimeter seam allowance. At the stitched parts, we use pinking shears. If you don't have pinking shears, just use regular scissors to make some snips. After cutting, we simply flip it over to the front side. Neatly steam it yourself. Then support the seam line along the edge. When supporting the seam line, you can place a piece of paper underneath. Here I'm using ordinary thin A4 printing paper. It's also fine not to use backing paper. I just think using backing paper makes it a bit easier. Then when tearing the paper, pay attention to tearing it sideways. Tear it open like this on both sides. Don't pull it forcefully. The operation for both collars is the same. After stretching the marking line well, set it here. Let's draw the front piece of the bodice. The two red lines at the top and bottom are two parallel lines I drew. Then I also drew a line in the center. The two parallel lines above and below extend 5 millimeters beyond the top and bottom positions of this pattern, which is enough. The dashed line in the middle of the pattern aligns with the vertical line below it. We can extend the positions on both sides by about 4 to 5 centimeters beyond those shown in the blueprint. What I mean here is that one side should extend by about 4 to 5 centimeters. Because after we finish measuring this, the positions on both sides will become narrower. Then we will align the dashed line with the center line beneath it. Fix the adjacent line's position up and down. Then connect the upper and lower marker points to draw out the position of this line. Then we take these two lines as the reference. Draw a line every 3 millimeters along its side. That is, add the one we just drew. There are 6 lines on one side in total, not counting the central line in the middle that we started with. After finishing one side, draw the lines on the other side. After all are drawn, it looks like this. The very center position is our center line. It's this line. Then, after drawing the first line on each side like this, from the position of the first line on both sides, draw 5 more lines outward, including the first line on both sides. There are 6 lines in total, not counting the center line we initially had in the middle. My fabric has a busy pattern, so it might be hard to draw a diagram for everyone. There are 6 lines like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The gaps between these 6 lines are all 3 millimeters. Then let's start by handling the first line on the right side. Simply fold it like this. Because I'm using a thermal pen, so I didn't iron it. If you use a water pen, you can iron the crease. After folding properly, we align the crease position with the third line. Ignore the second line and skip it directly. The crease position is shifted inward by 1 millimeter. Fold a line there to fix it in place. Here's where I start and end the stitches. It just needs to be a little outside these two parallel lines above and below. After folding, we fold the fourth line once more. The folding method is the same as with the first line. After folding, it overlaps with the sixth line. Fix the fold seam in place. After folding, you get these two folds like this. Then we turn around, do the same operation on the left side. Also fold these two folds. There are two folds on each side. After folding, it looks like this. At this point, we can take out our pattern, the position of the very bottom edge. Just align it with this parallel line at the bottom. The position of the middle dashed line aligns with the center line below. We quickly mark the edge position. Then we need to trim it a bit. Normally, leave a 5 millimeter margin. But before trimming, we take one more step. For example, this area around the neckline. If you directly trim it, because there are no back stitches here. Back stitches are made at a higher position, so this area tends to come apart easily. So we fold this part again and sew a few stitches on it along our neckline towards the side. Sewing about 2 or 3 millimeters away is fine, including this position at the very bottom edge. You can also sew a few stitches here to secure. The main purpose of this is to prevent, after trimming, the threads here from coming undone. If you think this is not an issue, it's also fine not to sew it. After sewing, take a look. It's exactly at the position where I drew the line. Just sew a few stitches here to secure it. Then we can trim it. Normally, leave a 5 millimeter seam allowance. This is how it looks after trimming. Now, this is the normal front piece of our outer fabric. Next, we will add the edge decoration. Similarly, we first press this pattern down. This is still on the front side of the outer fabric. There are two slanting lines like this on both sides. Mark the positions above and below it. Also make a marking point. Connect these marking points. Draw the slanting line onto the fabric. Then we take out the edge binding. This edge binding of mine is about 1 centimeter wide. The edge of the binding aligns with this diagonal line. Then we sew it in place. Here, I sew it in place 1 millimeter inside from the edge of the binding. Here, you just need to fix it in place. Try to make it look as neat as possible. After fixing it, it looks like this. Then we use the same method to handle the other side's edge. After both edges are finished, now this front piece is complete. We can continue according to the following steps. Here, we place the outer fabric and lining fabric pieces. First, sew along right sides facing each other. After pressing, open up the front and back pieces. Press the dart seam allowances open to both sides. Then we repeat the steps. Handle the lining in the same way. Then we mark the position of the neckline center point. Because we have a center line in front, if your sewing machine is still there, it is the topmost position of this line. the opening at the back of the position of this style line. Also, make a mark on the front at the topmost point. Then we take out the collar. Align the center of the collar with this center point. Align the positions on both sides with the marking point at the back. After aligning, we sew it directly. Sew along the upper and lower seam lines. At this moment, pay attention to the fabric underneath. Also, the collar fabric on top is all facing right side up. There is one more detail issue. It is the middle part of our collar. The two collars just merge together perfectly. There should be no gaps in the middle. Then we take out the buttonhole part we made earlier. I'll first mark the guideline at the bottom on the front side. You don't have to mark it if you don't want to. I'm doing this mainly to make it easier to explain to you. The guideline drawn above our positioning point aligns with the guideline at the bottom. The buttonhole should be placed right under the collar here. Then we sew directly along this style line. At this point, the left side is the fold balance position. The right side is this style. After sewing, it looks like this. Just fix this clasp in place first. Then we take out the collar fabric. The collar fabric and the front side of the main piece are stacked facing each other. Flip the whole thing over so that the main piece is on the top layer. Here we need to sew all around the neckline. When sewing, the front and back parts should have a 5mm seam allowance. Both sides where the embroidery hoops are also need to be sewn. The 5mm seam allowance at the front and back. Trim all the seam allowances at the 3 positions just sewn with pinking shears. Without using pinking shears, make notches at the curved areas. Then, when trimming the neckline, we must pay attention to one issue. That is, some areas can be quite stiff. If you use pinking shears, it's easy to accidentally cut through the fabric itself. So, you need to be a bit more careful. If you're really not confident, then just use ordinary scissors to make the cut. Then pass through the pointed seam position between the 2 front pieces of fabric. Clamp the fabric at the back and place it underneath. After clamping it slightly over, we'll just switch to using our hands directly. Don't keep using the purple blood money, because sometimes using the purple blood money easily tears the fabric. Then we use the same method to flip the other side over as well. After flipping it over properly, we tidy and press the corner edges a bit. After handling it, it looks like this. Then we take this area under the sleeves on both sides and unfold them respectively to align together. Here the fronts are facing each other. We seam rip directly along the 5mm stitching line. After ripping, it looks like this. Then we separate this stitching towards both sides. After separating, the lining and outer fabric have their wrong sides facing them together. Then we close this area. Then we flip to this side. Use the same method to finish this side as well. After both sides are finished, it looks like this. Then let's work on the bottom edge fold of the lining. Fold it inward directly towards the reverse side. At the seam area, Remember to spread the seam allowances to both sides. The entire edge needs to be folded. After folding, we use an iron to press it. Press this area to create a crease. After the bottom edge is properly handled, let's take a look at its back side. Like this. The front side looks like this. Do not handle the bottom edge and set it aside for now. Let's first address this area of the pocket opening. The seam allowance here is 1 centimeter. We can start by drawing the seam line on the front side too. This way, folding along the seam line will be more precise. Fold it towards the fabric's reverse side. Press the dart slightly to create the crease at this position. Because this area is relatively short, after folding up this crease, the crotch area becomes invisible. You can take the pattern out again. Mark the position on both sides of the crotch. Then we need to sew to the inner seam at this position. Make the channel for inserting the elastic band. Sew about 5 millimeters away from the edge crease. After sewing, it looks like this. Like this, the clamp is very short. You don't need to stop in the middle at all. Just drive straight through. You can flip it over and take a look. The position of this clamp is exactly where our cutting line is. It is in this style. It does not affect itself, so I just drove it over in one go. If it is relatively long, then you can just drive it in 2 parts. Next, don't thread the elastic band First, let's sew the drawstring line on the waistband. Regarding the drawstring line here, it should be sewn 2 millimeters on both sides of sewing the stitches 2 millimeters on each side. Loosen the stitch spacing a bit. Do not backstitch at the front. I use a stitch spacing of 4 and make this thread end a bit longer. After sewing, pull the thread. Let's thread the elastic band again. The size of this elastic band is written on our pattern. Just follow that size directly. No need to add extra seam allowance. Thread the elastic band here. I'm using a bias tape maker. After threading it through, at both ends, secure it in place with stitching. One side of the waistband elastic is attached properly. It looks like this. In the same way, attach the elastic on the other side as well. After both sides of the elastic are properly attached, let's tighten this part of the waistband again. At the same time, pull the 2 bottom lines closer together. This is the pleated section. If you don't know how and feel that this video might be a bit fast, we have a separate dual line video in the folder, which you can refer to. There is another issue. We have a center line here, right? Because when we were drawing it, it was drawn symmetrically. This center line, if you are still there, draw it on the front side of the fabric. Just draw the topmost point. Later, we can align the upper part for stitching. If you don't have this line, then don't fold it yourself yet. First, fold it in half. Find the center point and make a mark. Then, after making the mark, let's draw again. The size of the lower waistband after folding matches the bottom edge of the upper front section. Then when we sew later, the center point of the upper part and the center point of the lower part must align exactly. Therefore, when we adjust the folds, we need to modify this size according to the center point's position. This half matches the other half. Then this half here matches this half here. After adjusting, we sew the bottom edge of the front piece and the waistline together, facing each other like this. Sew along the upper and lower seam lines. Be careful to align the center points properly. After sewing, check it yourself. If there are no problems, we will remove the front drawstring. At this point, the front looks like this. The back looks like this. Then we need to handle the positions of the openings on both sides. Fold the lining backward. Align the front side of the outer fabric with this part of the lining. Then the bottom edge of the front lining has a crease, right? We have pressed a crease. Keep the position of this crease. The position of this crease should exactly align with where it joins the waistband below. Then the waist seam allowance faces toward the neckline. We sew along this 5mm seam allowance line. We need to pay attention to one issue. There's a collar inside. Don't sew over the collar. Check it after sewing. Sew a stitch here from this side to here. Then this side looks like this. Sew from here to here. The crease position at the bottom edge of the lining perfectly aligns with the waistline seam on the outer fabric. After sewing, trim the uppermost part here like this. Then we turn this part to the front side. Tidy it up. The back side looks like this. The front looks like this. Then we use the same method. We also fix the opening on the other side. On my side, there is a latch position. So when flipped, it looks like this. But the sewing method is the same. This clasp is where we will later join both sides together. Then this position will overlap. Sew a snap button or Velcro onto the clasp. Next, let's take a look at this area at the bottom edge of the lining. There are two ways to handle the bottom edge of the lining. One method is to align the fold with the line underneath. Sew the entire length using the long stitch. The other method also involves aligning this position. Cover the seam line underneath with it. Then we turn to the front side. Sew a continuous visible stitch line directly at the waist. While sewing the visible stitch, fix the position at the back. Then there is another issue at this position. The side seam at the armpit. Here the stroke is a bit wider due to its style. Then this part is relatively narrow. You can slightly trim the stroke here. Then it won't look so old-fashioned. It will be easier to contain, leaving about 3 millimeters. After trimming, then you fold it down like this again. It will be flatter. Then, on my side, I sew the top stitch directly on the front side. The starting position can be just behind this pressed corner. Place a piece of fabric of roughly the same height. Raise the area behind the pressed corner. It's less likely for the needle to skip in place. After sewing the top stitch, it looks like this. Then we will take the lower part, the positions of these two sides facing each other directly. Here we sew from bottom to top. Sew up to the position near the waist. About 2 centimeters away is fine. I will make a marker here. This marker is near the waist, 2 centimeters from the bottom edge of this inner part, close to the waist position. Because of the style on this upper part, it has a slight fold. So at this position, you need to slightly pull this fabric outward to flatten it. Adjust this seam. After sewing, it looks like this. This section is not stitched. Then we separate the seam at this position to both sides. Scrape it with your fingernail or use an iron to press and shape this area. After separating, turn it to the front side. Here we're going to sew a top stitch. Let me explain the position of the top. I start sewing from the neckline at the very top here. I sew all around the neckline and collar in a complete circle. Here, I sew the top stitch 1 millimeter sew from the around edge. The neckline. Keep sewing like this. When sewing reaches this position, let the thread go downward, keep moving downward. Sew to the opening position of the pants here. Then sew down 1 or 2 stitches. Sew across. Then sew towards this opening. Sew towards the collar. The vehicle reaches this position. We can stop this line here. Then the vehicle task is finished. After the main line vehicle is done, we then turn back at this reverse change point. Here we sew at the middle overlapping position. After sewing it well, make stitches at this position, make several notches here, then turn it to the front side. Overall tidying up. Iron it, especially the collar part. The collar part, we need to fold it down like this and iron it. The position at the back, the part below, you can just merge them together like this. Then the position of this fastening point at the top, sew a hidden snap or Velcro at the bottom yourself.